Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our Office 365 ExchangeCon breakout session on social analytics, leveraging the power of your untapped intelligence in Office 365 or Exchange. We're very pleased to have TrustSphere as a sponsor and presenter for this online gathering of MS Exchange and Office 365 professionals. My name is Roger, and I will be the event moderator. Before I introduce our speaker, I have a few quick housekeeping items. We will be using the Twitter hashtag Office365EXCHCON to share information and feedback throughout today's ExchangeCon event. All participant lines are muted, but we encourage you to use the chat panel to submit any questions or comments you have during the presentation. We will be addressing those questions at the end, and we will conclude in time for those of you who will be joining our final capstone session that will begin immediately following this one. Our speakers for this session are Manish Goel and Michael Knight. Manish is the founder and CEO of TrustSphere, and he has more than 15 years experience in the software and services sectors. Manish is also the current vice chairman of the Online Trust Alliance Board of Directors. Michael Knight is the vice president of Solution Services. He works with customers across the United States, and he serves as the technical liaison. He is also responsible for product development and will be providing us with a product demonstration today. Manish, thank you for joining us today, and I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you everybody for joining us. I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about messaging intelligence. It's a brand new area, which we find very exciting, and I hope you will too. A little bit about TrustSphere to start with, though. We're pioneers in the messaging intelligence space. Where that sits, just for those of you who are visual, is sort of at the intersection of social network analytics and big data. As a company, I mean, our vision is really to deliver competitive advantage and make life easier for our clients who are using this untapped level of intelligence that sits within their own email infrastructure. The technology itself is highly scalable, and it's really built on delivering a set of real-time analytics real-time analytics and a social graph for the organization, which are the analytics of which can be leveraged in a variety of different ways. And we'll talk a little bit about that as the presentation goes on. We work seamlessly with Office 365 as well as Microsoft Exchange, Office 365 obviously in the cloud, and Exchange obviously on-prem. We have a number of successful deployments with clients of all sizes across the world, and really the intelligence that we have is deliverable on a variety of different platforms, including IBM Connections as well as Salesforce.com. So what is messaging intelligence? So imagine there's a lot of, at the moment in the marketplace, there's a lot of attention given to what I call big S social, which is Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. But social for me is something different. Social, if you think about it, is interactions that happen between individuals. Those interactions have been happening all, ever since humans could talk. It's all about the interactions which happen either face-to-face, but increasingly on a digital basis. So imagine this. Imagine you could understand if you could understand who's communicating with who, particularly in the digital form. You could understand the direction of communication, the frequency of communication, the velocity of communication, the cadence of communication. It would end up looking something like this. You can see there is a social graph. Now, the social graph it looks like a LinkedIn graph of some sort. Some people call it a LinkedIn graph. What this does is it actually maps out a set of relationships for an organization. What we do at TrustSphere is we effectively, on a real-time basis, understand what those relationships look like. On top of those relationships, we build a set of, we track the interactions. On top of those interactions, we build a set of analytics. And those analytics we use across the organization really to change a number of business processes across that organization. We deliver a set of insights that come from those relationships. We're very good at being able to see activity that's occurring on those, and we're also good at being able to see changes that happen on activity that's happening on those. So if you look at it and you think about this, what we're doing is we're adding context and trust really to those email relationships in order to provide actionable intelligence and insights back into a variety of different parts of the business process. So as you know, there's significant volumes of email communications every day. There's huge volumes of email going on. What we do is we actually analyze on a real-time basis those emails, and we build out that social graph or a relationship map, if you will. As we extract from that a set of insights. And those insights, as I said, are available to clients right across the business processes, right across their business processes. I'll give you some examples of how clients are using this right now. So again, our clients use this to help in a number of different ways. They basically take our technology, which is the messaging intelligence engine. What they do is from there, a set of analytics is drawn. We call it the enterprise social analytics. And those analytics are then applied in a variety of different business applications. First one is to actually help to identify and investigate internal fraud, where we can help conduct triage. Our clients are using it to help conduct triage around internal investigations that they have. We use it to improve the CRM's capabilities. So as you know, CRMs have a huge vision around collaboration. Right now, there's big gaps in data that exist in the CRMs. I'll explain a little bit about how we're using our technology to augment that gap. We use it from a security perspective to prevent email false positives. Those of you who know about running email infrastructure recognize that email false positives or good messages, that legitimate messages that are often marked as spam, are a real annoyance to the organization and can cause real business disruption. I'll explain how we resolve that problem. And we also use it to increase enterprise-wide collaboration, really to improve the performance and the effectiveness of the team as a whole. I'm going to hand it over right now to Michael Knight, who will talk a little bit about the architecture and how the technology works, as well as give you a quick demonstration, and I'll come back and explain some of the use cases for the technology. Michael, over to you.
Thanks, Manish. So because we've been doing this for a number of years, we have already been building and have finished the construction of connectors into Office 365 and into the Exchange environment. And we're able to take those connectors and apply them to your environment and then do the processing using a product called TrustSphere. We're able to then display this data in a number of different formats. I'll be showing you a demonstration of a product called TrustSphere today, and we'll be talking about some of the other ways that this product gets displayed. It's fairly simple to do, and it's fairly painless as well. So I'd like to show you a little bit about the interface and the type of data that you can see real world, and I'd like to take you through an example. Let's take an example of internal fraud and how someone might go through the process of detecting and investigating internal fraud. What we've done is we've connected our TrustSphere product to an email system, and we're pulling in data. The TrustSphere environment gives us a number of different capabilities. Some are graphical and some are report-based. So I'm going to click on a view, and we're going to actually look at a particular relationship. So I, as an investigator, am looking under Susan Staub and what she has been doing in terms of her email environment. I can actually see the relationships that are being formed, and from that I can make determinations of where to really look. So what we're doing is we're answering the question here of how do I start as an investigator, which is one of the most difficult things to do. It's like finding the needle in the haystack. So I'm going to push the submit button, and I'm going to see Susan's social graph. These are the relationships that she's forming through email over a particular period of time. Now what you'll notice is that there is a large arrow showing that there's a lot of communication coming from Susan to another organization. I'm going to click into that and learn more about that relationship that's being formed. I'm going to look at under this and see some of the details. I can see that Susan is having a set of conversations with Andy, but this is larger than any other set of conversations that she's having. One of the things that we've found in doing investigations is that one question leads to another. And in doing so, what I'd like to do is learn more about Andy and the other relationships that he has. So I'd like to just click on Andy in the interface, and I'd like to find out some more detail by expanding an understanding of his relationships through other people within our organization. When I click on that, what it does is one question leads to another, and I'm actually able to see the other people that Andy is interacting with across the organization. Now, Susan worked in purchasing, and the question that we had is, why is it that so many different projects are being passed to this particular client? And this gives us an understanding of all the characters involved in order to do our investigation. Instead of weeding through thousands and thousands of emails, I'm able to actually see from the top down the context of the relationships and see this very quickly. So in a matter of moments, without too much technical understanding, I can get a view into this particular person and their relationships. I'd like to show you another view using the tool. I'd like to look at the tool from another perspective of just seeing reports that it can generate. So I'd like to look at account activity. This is a very common report that people end up running in order to see what type of relationships, and can you give me a history of the relationships that are being formed in email. So I'm going to put in a particular time frame, and I'm going to put in John, and I'd like to hit submit. And I can see an account activity report. There are a number of different reports, and as you'll notice in the report itself, it'll show me things like the dates. It'll show me who it is that John was interacting with, and it'll show me the direction of that email. Now, one of the things that we don't do is we don't get into the content of email. We're looking at the relationships themselves, but we can get down into the level of the subject line if your organization allows that. One other thing that we could do is around staff reports. One of the things that we find is that when someone takes over another person's job, it takes them somewhere in the order of 60 to 120 days to fully understand all the relationships that that person had. And thus, it costs the organization quite a bit of money to actually make these changes and to bring people up to speed. People like sales, people in purchasing, people in customer service. Because we never want to lose any of our relationships. The relationships become the lifeblood of the organization. So I'd like to run a special report on John because we're going to have someone else take over his role. So I'd like to look at a staff handover report, just a simple report that's built into the product, and I'm going to hit submit for this time frame. And what I've noticed is that he has a number of different relationships that have been formed, and we've also color-coded them based on how recent the relationship was. Green being most recent, yellow being further out, and red being not quite so recent. So these are the types of reports of understanding the context of relationships that you can end up running, and there's a host of them that come with the product. So I'd like to pass this back over to Manish and allow you to finish some of the different ways that the product's being used today. Manish?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, absolutely. So from our side, there's a number of, as you can see, there's a huge value that we can provide into the investigations teams. But we found that there's also other ways in which clients can use this. The next one that I'm going to show you is how some of our clients are using this really to improve CRM effectiveness. For those of you who are involved in the CRM or the customer relationship process, these are some of the issues that our clients regularly tell us that are problems. First and foremost, the data that sits within the CRM is often just not accurate, it's not timely, and it's just not entered into by salespeople. Salespeople typically don't enter data into the CRMs. What that means is that clients are typically finding that there's a lack of trust in that data, and there's a lack of trust in the CRM in itself. The impact of those are things like the impact of this is things such as sales forecasts are inaccurate. The account executives or people responsible for a client relationship are often blindsided because they just don't know when other people in the organization are communicating with them. Also, clients tend to get overloaded. They're either neglected or bombarded by messages from different parts of the organization. And really, and as Michael was explaining previously, relationships are often not effectively handed over when staff leave. What our technology does is it allows you to actually see activity that's occurring from right across the organization. Whilst a typical CRM implementation may have anywhere between 15 and 20% of the organization having licensed licensed CRM users, What we, just about everyone in the organization has email, has access to email. What we, an analyst study showed that less than 10% of all customer interactions actually get captured in the CRM. That's the gap. And because there's only a small amount of interactions that get captured, it means that the CRM data in itself is not complete and not rich. What we're doing is actually augmenting that. We complete the relationship data that's in the CRM. And we don't touch the content, but what we do is we identify relationships. And from those relationships, we identify what interactions are occurring on those relationships. We also find the interactions beyond just the CRM licensed users. What that does is it means that teams and relationship managers in particular can work better together. In fact, in many ways, it's creating what I call a coordinated conversation. By providing full visibility over what's occurring, you get a coordinated conversation right from a client perspective. Also, what you're able to do is quickly see whether clients are being neglected. Often the biggest problem with customer retention is where clients are neglected, particularly on renewals or sort of any sort of recurring, from a recurring perspective. What we're able to do is make those visible to people who otherwise may not see them. I'll give you a couple of screenshots here which describe how we work with, for instance, Salesforce.com. What we're showing you here is a classic Salesforce screen, which you see is a typical opportunity screen. What we're able to do is through the analytics that we have, through the social analytics that we're building through, what we're able to do is insert a set of indicators towards the right-hand side where the green arrows are. What we can we can identify and insert a risk indicator for a particular opportunity where there's an insufficient amount of cadence of communication that's going on based on the stage that this particular opportunity is at. We can put a status in, and the status basically shows you whether there's frequency or responsiveness of communication that's going on. We can also show you the last communication date. So our clients are using this, particularly sales managers, are using this to guide their cadence calls with their sales reps to see whether there's, to make sure that if there is, whether those, to prioritize those accounts which have high risk and prioritize those accounts where there's a lack of activity going on. This allows you to not miss opportunities which otherwise would be there, which otherwise would be available. The next page I'll show you is one very simple application of our technology, but a very powerful application, which is to find all the relationships that exist within an organization. Again, those of you who have had any exposure to the sales operations environment would recognize that only a small portion of the real relationships within an organization are entered into the CRM. And that's generally because people take time, and people don't either have time to or don't want to enter data into the CRM. We're working with a financial services institution where the private bankers don't like putting their data into the CRM. They came to us and asked, is there an easy way of being able to identify all those relationships from across the organization? And that's exactly what we do. Whilst people won't necessarily put data into the CRM, they will communicate with their key relationships via email. What we do is we map those relationships back to the individual account. As you can see on this particular screen, there may be just a handful of contacts for this particular account in the CRM. However, we've identified a larger number of unknown relationships, which can then, on a one-click basis, be put into the CRM. What that does is that increases the data quality of the CRM. It increases, it's a step closer to adoption of the CRM, because what there is finally a rich set of data and accurate data that exists within that CRM. Aberdeen Research did some work on this, and what they recognize is people who are using messaging intelligence experience 40% higher customer satisfaction, a 74% increase in forecasting accuracy. The teams achieve sales quotas 54% more often, and customer retention rates are 120% higher between those organizations who are using messaging intelligence versus those who aren't. And that's quite a significant benefit that comes out of using this technology. So there's some real gains to be achieved within the sales function. But the sales function is not the only one. For those of you who have any responsibility within the email infrastructure, email security environment, you recognize that one of the biggest problems with email is false positives. Spam filters in themselves make significant errors. those errors often seem very small, but those errors can have quite consequential impact across the organization. What our technology does is we effectively build a dynamic whitelist for the organization, and it's a bespoke whitelist based on customer interactions which are going on, between interactions between people. What we do effectively is learn from those interactions who's communicating with who, and we develop a whitelist. The whitelist that we build is based on three factors. One is obviously on the relationship pair. Secondly is based around authentication. And the third portion of that is based around reputation. The impact that it has on clients is quite significant. This is just one example of how one of our clients has been using this. We did a quick audit for them. We looked at about 1.7 million items of spam over a 30-day period. We identified 565 false positives. As you can see, those were from in the right-hand side there, from a number of really large organizations. Most of those messages, many of those messages, about half, were from one-to-one messages. That means person to person. Fundamentally, what that meant was the business process, which relied on that messaging, the message to be delivered, was actually fragmented or broken. What we have the ability to do is work alongside just about any anti-spam filter, and by working alongside it, what we can do is correct any errors that it makes. By doing that, what we do is restore integrity back into that overlying the overlying messaging infrastructure. And we rely so heavily on messaging infrastructure these days to ensure that just about every business process in the organization operates smoothly. Any gap or any break in that becomes a real problem. And that's one of the other ways that our clients are using the intelligence or the social analytics that comes from the messaging intelligence platform that we have. I'll give you another couple of quick examples of how some of our clients are using this. This one is to really improve collaboration and improve and make and generate a smarter workplace. So we have an integration into IBM Connections, and what we're doing there is we're providing the same level of visibility as Michael had shown. However, for individuals to find people within their network. If you have a look at the next slide there, you can see that what we're able to do is really find a go-to person. So imagine a situation where you're going to have to meet a client or a prospect, and it's somebody that you've never met before. How do you know? How do you get context about that particular person? How do you identify or understand what to know or what's going on with that particular person? You want to find somebody on your team who knows them. So what we do is we have the ability to very quickly, through our relationship score mechanism, understand and the relationship network diagram, show you who does know this person. And not only do you know who that person is, but how are they connected to the organization? What that does, and if you have a look at the lines on those particular graphs, they show you the relationship strength. It means that you can quickly call that go-to person ahead of the meeting, such that you have context. What that means is, our clients are using this for their sales representatives to be forewarned and forearmed before going into these meetings, such that they're prepared and planned around the meeting to make that interaction much more effective. And a final way that I'll show you how we're using this, how some of our clients are using our technology from the messaging intelligence technology, is to really, again, work with one of our archiving partners to detect fraud, to detect and prevent fraud. If you look at the next slide there, what we have is we're adding context to content, really to improve e-discovery. Many of you are involved in the e-discovery process. The e-discovery process can be quite arduous at times, getting the data out of the existing archive and or bringing it to a point where investigators are able to ask the questions. To get to the right answers, you need to ask the right questions. You need to get the data in the investigator's hands. What we're doing is working with an organization called Intradyne to do a couple of things. First of all, we have an integration into their archive. What happens here is the data at the bottom, the data from either Office 365, from Exchange, or from any other mail system goes into their archive. What we do is we cross-reference that. We take a thin slice of that, the metadata, and the metadata only, and we cross-reference it. We put it into our analytics engine. That analytics engine is then made available to investigators to conduct e-discovery. Again, right at the beginning of a discovery process, you want to be able to, often you have a blank page. What the investigator needs to do is very rapidly understand which relationships are relevant for further investigation, which people are relevant for further investigation, and which people aren't. What this allows, what our technology allows them to do is do exactly that. Quickly identify circles of collusion, identify those people who are involved in a particular incident or an allegation, identify those people who aren't involved in that allegation. By excluding people who aren't involved in the allegation, particularly where external counsel is involved, what you're able to do is save a huge amount of time and effort and cost in terms of the whole external legal process that's involved in investigating these the folks who aren't involved. It also allows you to quickly get to the bottom of the answers. It gets you to the answers much more quickly and gets to the bottom of the issue very quickly by being able to effectively skirt over the top of just about any relationship set that exists. These were just a couple of examples of how our technology is being used, really to contextualize relationships. But to give you an idea, a number of the analysts in the marketplace have been covering us recently. I'll leave you to, if your clients of these organizations, refer to the reports that we have listed here. You're very welcome to have a quick read of what they're saying. But effectively, most of the analysts and most of the market recognizes that, and it's something that I think folks who are in the messaging space recognize intuitively, that there is a huge amount of value that exists within the whole messaging space. Being able to take being able to sift between the spam and the viruses and the marketing messages and the newsletters which are flowing through the messaging infrastructure, but really being able to sift from that and identify a set of relationships, and then really take those relationships and build a rich set of analytics on top of those relationships, provides a huge amount of value and a huge amount of power right across the organization. So effectively, just some of the advantages at our end in terms of what we do. First of all, we integrate seamlessly with Office 365 and MX Exchange. So also, if you are migrating from Office 365 to Exchange, the analytics themselves can transfer. So we're capable of having the analytics transfer seamlessly. So you can start building on one platform today and move it over to another tomorrow. That's relatively easy to do. What we're doing is really synthesizing what I call the real social for enterprise and government. So as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of focus on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. Whilst those are very valid platforms for social media, that's not where real social interactions go on. And the social analytics that I've been talking about, that Michael's been demonstrating, really are around that. They're around true social interactions. And they're very, very telling. We've looked at metadata. We only look at metadata, and that's an important point. People often ask us, why don't we do content analysis? Content analysis has two major drawbacks for us. One is privacy, and the second thing is with content, you often end up with a lot of noise in there. From our perspective, you hire managers to make good decisions. Those decisions, if when backed with evidence, become much more powerful and much more accurate. Metadata provides a sufficient level of analytics to enable a manager, a business manager, to ask the right questions or be alerted to areas where certain things are not going as they expect to. And metadata is sufficient for that. And again, just extending on that, what we're providing is context. As I said before, you need to ask in order to get to the right answers, you have to ask the right questions. Providing context allows you to get to those questions really quickly. And again, we're using very rich, high-quality data. The data that we're using is absolute. It's not inferential data. It's real data based on transactions, email transactions that are occurring across the messaging flow. What it does, it really allows you to get insights, clear insights that are made transparent and made available when someone is making a decision. The integrations that we have into 365, into Exchange, into Salesforce.com, into connections, really improve that time to insight. It provides the value of the analytics straight back to a decision maker at the point that the decision is being made into the system in which that decision is being made. So just in summary, Adding context to unstructured data really leads to actionable insights. Adding context to email data leads to relationship insights. Delivering actionable insights to the point of decision making changes outcomes, and that's fundamental. It changes business outcomes, whether it be for systems, in the false positive example, or whether it be for sales managers or for investigators in each of those examples. And changing outcomes improves either competitiveness or makes life easier for many business and IT users. And that's really what the technology is about. It's leveraging the capability that exists, the untapped capability that exists within your messaging infrastructure, and bringing it to life and bringing it to the fore, right into the business processes where it can be utilized, where that intelligence can be utilized most effectively. In terms of further reading, Michael Osterman has prepared a white paper on this. It's called The Critical Need for Messaging Intelligence. I highly recommend, if you have any further questions or you'd like to do a little bit more research on this, it's available free of charge on his on Osterman Research's website. And finally, just in terms of contact details for Michael and myself, we'd love to hear from you. We're always interested in hearing your comments, your thoughts, your observations, anything at all. I'd love to hear a little bit more. I'd love to hear your questions and love to hear a little bit more about what you think. So please don't hesitate to contact us. On that note, Roger, I'd like to hand it back to you.
Well, thank you, Manish, and thank you, Michael. I do have some questions, and we have some time, so I'd like to pose several questions to you at this time. Beginning with the first one we have is, how hard is the messaging intelligence engine to install? And can you talk a little bit about how much effort is involved with that?
Michael, did you want to take that one?
Absolutely. We do this all the time. We have a set of connectors. So there's typically two components to it. One in which we're setting in the connector, and two in which we're allowing the system to learn. So it's a fairly quick process, which can start from a technology perspective in less than a day, and then can address a number of different use cases as you bring them into the different systems. So, other questions?
Very good. I do have several other questions that around the subject of types of organizations. That I'll just summarize into what kind of organizations are seeing the maximum adoption of this type of technology, and maybe you can speak a little bit about what's driving that.
Sure, absolutely. I'll take that one. Yeah, a number of our clients, we work extensively with enterprise customers and government customers. At the enterprise end, it's all the way from Fortune 10 companies right down to smaller organizations, law firms, and organizations such as that. And the enterprises are using this for a variety of different reasons. Likewise with government. So from a government perspective, we're working with large government agencies, some of the most prominent government agencies and state agencies in the U.S. as well as across the world. And what we're finding, our clients are using this typically, as I said, really to solve the business problem that is most important to them. And that does vary. A number of our clients are using this for investigations to really improve that whole investigation process. A number of our clients are also using this, particularly the enterprise clients are using this to empower their sales forces to really improve competitiveness and improve collaboration for their sales forces and their sales environments. So the short answer is it really varies based on the client's business problem. But what we also find is once they're using the technology in one part of the business, they find the value of the social analytics actually has relevance in different parts of the business.
Excellent. What's really fascinating is it looks like it's very intuitive in terms of the information. And so could you speak a little bit about how quickly an organization can start to realize the benefits once they have the technology installed?
Yeah, I mean, the technology starts learning from day one. So, I mean, it is a self-learning set of algorithms that effectively are applied to build the analytics. We also have the ability to go backwards. So, depending on what the archive looks like, or depending on what the data, the historical data availability is, we can go backwards and build a set of analytics, sort of ex post facto, after the fact, if you will. But what we find is the moment that our technology is installed, there's value that comes from that pretty much instantaneously. In the Salesforce environment, we start to find relationships immediately that weren't registered, and that starts from day one. And likewise, from an investigation perspective, we start to see and identify patterns which otherwise weren't easily visible. So, I'd say the benefits. It doesn't take long for the benefits to be visible and to be visceral once the technology has been installed.
Well, fantastic. Unfortunately, as usual, we don't have time for all the questions that we have. We do have our conference capstone session coming up shortly, so we will have to wrap it up. But on behalf of msexchange.org, I want to thank you, Manish and Michael, and of course TrustSphere, for helping us to make today's event possible. And I want to thank everyone for joining this session, and please don't forget to join us for the concluding capstone session with our panel of experts using the separate link for that session, which is in your confirmation email and can also be found at that Twitter hashtag Office365EXCHON. That's Office365EXCHON. Thank you again for joining, and you may now disconnect.